Blood-red letters dripped down our door, "Your kind doesn't belong here." Emma's wheelchair stopped behind me. Before I could shield her, she saw it. That night, my disabled daughter vanished. I found her in Veronica's basement, pinned against a crumbling wall, her terrified eyes begging for rescue. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more Karen stories. Your kind doesn't belong here. The red spray paint dripped down our front door like blood. I stood frozen on the porch, groceries slipping from my grasp as I read the hateful message. This was the third vandalism incident this week, each one worse than the last. Behind me, I heard the soft whir of Emma's wheelchair. "Don't look, sweetheart," I said quickly, but it was too late. Emma's face went pale. At 19, my daughter had faced discrimination before, but nothing this blatant. Despite being in a wheelchair since birth, she had always maintained her bright spirit. Now I watched that light dim in her eyes. "They don't even know us, Dad," she whispered. I knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her trembling hands in mine. "We're not going anywhere. This is our home now." We had moved to Oakwood Heights just 3 months ago after my wife's death. The neighborhood had seemed perfect with its tree-lined streets and well-maintained houses. But from day one, Veronica Chambers, the HOA president everyone called Karen behind her back, had made it clear we weren't welcome. First it was formal violation notices about the wheelchair ramp we installed. Then anonymous complaints about Emma's art displayed in our front window. Now this open hatred scrawled across our door. My phone rang, startling me. An unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Bennett speaking." "Dad." Emma's voice trembled. "I need help." My heart stopped. "Emma? Where are you?" "In Veronica's basement." "Please come quick." Her voice cut off abruptly. Veronica Chambers was the HOA president everyone called Karen behind her back. She had made our lives miserable since the day we moved in, claiming our wheelchair ramps violated neighborhood aesthetics, and sending daily violation notices for ridiculous things like Emma's art display in our front window. I grabbed my keys and ran through the rain to Veronica's house 4 doors down. The front door was locked, but I noticed the basement window was slightly open. Without hesitation, I forced it wider and lowered myself into the darkness below. "Emma?" I called out, fumbling for a light switch. A dim bulb flickered on, revealing a nightmare. Emma was pressed against the far wall, her wheelchair tipped over beside her. Veronica stood with her back to me, leaning into my daughter, pinning her against the crumbling old brick wall. "You people don't belong here," Veronica hissed, her voice barely audible. "I've worked too hard maintaining our property values to let someone like you ruin everything. Get away from my daughter," I shouted, rushing forward. Veronica whirled around, her face contorted with rage. "Mr. Bennett? Your daughter was trespassing on my property." "That's a lie," Emma gasped, her face pale with pain. "She invited me to see some old jewelry she thought I could use for my art. Then she—" "Shut up." Veronica lunged toward Emma again, but I pulled her back. "What is wrong with you?" I demanded, stepping between them. "She's a disabled teenager." Veronica's eyes were wild. "She's been rallying the neighbors against me, taking pictures of my house, claiming I've violated my own rules with that garden shed." I helped Emma back into her wheelchair, noticing the bruises already forming on her arms. "We're leaving. And we're calling the police." "You can't prove anything," Veronica sneered. "Who do you think they'll believe? The respected HOA president who's lived here for 30 years, or the troublemaking newcomers?" As we turned to leave, Emma pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "Actually, I recorded everything. From the moment you invited me in and started threatening me." The color drained from Veronica's face. The police arrived within minutes. Officer Rodriguez took Emma's statement while paramedics checked her injuries. The bruises on her arms clearly showed fingerprints where Veronica had gripped her, and the impact against the wall had left scrapes on her back. "I've known Veronica for years," Officer Rodriguez told me quietly. "There have been incidents before, but no one ever had proof." Veronica was taken away in handcuffs, screaming about property values and how we were ruining the neighborhood. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, watching in shock as the HOA president they feared was placed in the back of a police car. That night, as I helped Emma into bed, she winced from the pain. "Why did she hate us so much, Dad?" she asked, her eyes filling with tears. "All I ever did was try to be friendly." I had no answer that made sense. How could I explain such hatred to my kind-hearted daughter? "Some people are just broken inside, sweetheart," I finally said. "But you're safe now." Sleep didn't come easily for either of us. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma pinned against that wall, terrified and alone. If she hadn't been able to call me, the next morning brought a flood of visitors. Neighbors we barely knew came with food, flowers, and apologies. We should have stood up to her years ago, Mrs. Patel from across the street admitted, bringing homemade curry. Veronica made everyone afraid to speak up. Mr. Collins, an elderly man from the end of the block, brought Emma a beautiful wooden box for her jewelry-making supplies. I was on the original HOA board before Veronica took over, he explained. She turned a community organization into her personal dictatorship. Throughout the day, we heard stories of Veronica's reign of terror. Families forced to move after endless harassment, gardens destroyed in the night, pets mysteriously disappearing after their owners opposed her at meetings. Why didn't anyone report her? I asked, bewildered by the extent of it. She had connections at City Hall, Mrs. Rodriguez, Officer Rodriguez's mother, explained. And she was very careful. Never left evidence until now. That afternoon, a detective came to take additional statements and photographs of Emma's injuries. Miss Chambers is facing serious charges, she informed us. Assault, false imprisonment, hate crime enhancements for targeting your daughter due to her disability. Emma looked troubled. I don't want to ruin her life. I just wanted her to stop. The detective's expression softened. You didn't ruin her life, honey. She made her choices. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. The courthouse wasn't fully accessible, which seemed particularly ironic given the circumstances. 2 officers had to help carry Emma's wheelchair up several steps. Inside, Veronica sat with her lawyer, looking smaller somehow in her gray pantsuit, her hair pulled back severely from her face. She didn't meet our eyes. The prosecutor presented Emma's recording. The courtroom fell silent as Veronica's voice filled the room. People like you are a burden. Always wanting special treatment, making everyone look at your wheelchair instead of our beautiful neighborhood. You're driving down property values just by existing. Emma's calm response was even more powerful. My existence isn't about property values, Miss Chambers. I'm a person, not a financial liability. Then the sounds of a struggle, Emma's cry of pain, and Veronica's final threat. If you tell anyone about this, I'll make sure you and your father lose everything. Even Veronica's lawyer looked disturbed. The judge denied bail, citing the severity of the crime and Veronica's apparent lack of remorse. As we left the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Emma, despite her pain and exhaustion, spoke with a dignity that brought tears to my eyes. I don't want revenge, she told them. I want change. I want people to understand that disabilities don't make us less valuable members of a community. Her words made headlines across the state. Disabled teen shows compassion for attacker. Over the next few months, our lives transformed. The HOA was disbanded and reformed with a focus on actual community building rather than enforcement. The new board's first action was to create an accessibility fund to help residents modify their homes for disabled family members. Emma started a support group for people with disabilities in our area, which quickly became a powerful advocacy organization. City officials, embarrassed by the publicity, fast-tracked improvements to make public buildings more accessible. Letters came from across the country, people sharing similar experiences with HOAs, disabled individuals thanking Emma for standing up, parents of disabled children expressing their gratitude for her courage. Through it all, Emma remained humble. I didn't do anything special, Dad, she insisted. I just wanted to be treated like a person. When Veronica's trial date arrived, the evidence was overwhelming. Beyond Emma's recording, other victims had come forward, emboldened by her bravery. Former HOA board members testified about Veronica's obsession with undesirables, who might affect property values. Most damning was the discovery of Veronica's journals, found during a search of her home. Page after page detailed her hatred for disabled people, whom she called eyesores and property value killers. The jury took only 2 hours to find her guilty on all counts. At the sentencing hearing, the judge asked if Emma wanted to make a statement. She wheeled herself to the front of the courtroom, looking directly at Veronica for the first time since the attack. I forgive you, Miss Chambers, she said quietly. Not because what you did wasn't wrong, but because holding on to hate would only hurt me more. I hope someday you'll understand that communities are built on compassion, not property values. Veronica broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, the first emotion besides anger she had shown throughout the proceedings. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison plus mandatory counseling and community service with disabled veterans upon release. Miss Chambers, he concluded, You imprisoned this young woman against a wall. Now you will face your own walls, and hopefully learn the lesson she has so graciously tried to teach you. 1 year later, our neighborhood held its first annual Accessibility Awareness Festival. Emma, now a sophomore in college studying inclusive design, was the guest of honor. The street was filled with food, music, and booths showcasing adaptive technologies. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged Emma tightly. You transformed our neighborhood, Corita. Before, we were just houses next to each other. Now we're a real community. I watched my daughter surrounded by friends, her face glowing with joy as she demonstrated jewelry-making techniques to children in the art tent. The bruises had long since faded, but the change she had sparked continued to grow. That evening, as the festival wound down, Emma received a letter that had been delivered to the community center. The return address was from the State Women's Correctional Facility. Emma opened it carefully, reading silently before handing it to me. Dear Emma, I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that your words at my sentencing changed something in me. I've been working with a therapist to understand why I became so fixated on appearances and property values that I lost sight of humanity. My granddaughter was recently diagnosed with a condition that will eventually require a wheelchair. When my daughter told me, my first thought was about ramps and accessibility, not property values. That's when I realized how much I've changed because of you. The wall I pinned you against was physical, but the walls in my mind were much stronger and more damaging. Thank you for helping me begin to break them down. Veronica Chambers. Emma was quiet as I finished reading. What do you think? She finally asked. I think you did something remarkable, I told her. You didn't just change a neighborhood. You changed someone who seemed beyond reaching. As the sun set over Oakwood Heights, neighbors gathered on blankets for an outdoor movie. Emma's wheelchair, once seen by Veronica as a threat to property values, now moved freely through a community that had learned what real value looked like. Dad, Emma whispered as the movie began, are you happy we stayed and fought? I put my arm around my remarkable daughter's shoulders. Best decision we ever made, sunshine. Best decision we ever made.